This is a conversation that I've been procrastinating on. Because if you've ever loved somebody that is in active addiction, you know that this is one of the hardest things to come to terms with. And that is, you cannot save someone who does not want to be saved. What's the term? How's the term go? You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink. I don't say that from judgment. I say that, as always, from lived experience. From lived experience on both ends of it. As somebody who didn't want to be saved, and as somebody who tried to save somebody who didn't want to be saved. I try to make these episodes as hard to talk about as possible, because I know that when something is hard, then it's probably necessary. Whether that be for my own sanity or spiritual growth, or maybe somebody who hears this, maybe this can impact somebody in a positive way. I had people who loved me and fought to try to protect me and rescue me, and I wasn't ready. And I was also in denial. That had a lot to do with it, being in denial. I was in denial that I was an alcoholic or an addict. I was in denial that I had lost control or no longer had the ability to use any mood or mind-altering substance in a recreational manner. Trying to save someone who's not ready, it can break your heart and it can ruin your life if you're not careful. You'll lose sleep, you'll lose peace, you'll lose yourself trying to hold somebody else together who's committed to falling apart. And that sounds so harsh. And I can tell you for sure that that's not the thought process behind the person who is still in active addiction. They're not, oh, I'm committed to falling apart. It's not that. It's just it can be a many different reasons. For me, I didn't even know that help existed. I didn't know that it was even possible to live life without substances. I honestly, I did not believe that was possible. But, it's not always love that saves somebody. Sometimes it's consequences. For me, it was consequences. Consequences is what ended up saving me. I'm just lucky enough that I survived long enough to meet those consequences. Sometimes all you can do is stop standing between the person in active addiction and the reality that they're creating for themselves. Let me free somebody up today. The addiction is not your fault. It's not your responsibility. You did not create it, and you are not responsible for curing it. And please understand, when I say that, I'm not saying that to be mean. I'm saying that as somebody who has been through all the cycles of grief when it comes to this, when it comes to myself and my family members. I spent the majority of my 20s angry, so angry, because for the life of me, I could not understand why my mom raised me the way she did. Anything that you see in me that's good came from my mother. Does that make sense? Like, anything that you can identify in me as a positive or a good thing without knowing me personally, that came from my mother, because my mother raised me and she's a wonderful woman. But my brother never got to meet the same woman that raised me. When I was 19, I had custody of my brother. He was 8 years old. And like I said, I spent the majority of my 20s so angry because I couldn't understand why I got to have a mother and my brother didn't. So subsequently, I spent years trying to be a father, a mother, a brother, and then maybe there's a little bit left for me. I remember the first time I was introduced to the big book. It's so it's so amazing to be able to look back and see where God was with me in moments where I thought I was so far away from God. But when I got locked up, that was the first time I was introduced to the big book, and I meet this kid in there. So I went through withdrawal in jail. I spent 5 months in jail, and I meet this kid. He comes in, and he was, I could tell he was down bad. He was going through withdrawal, and I know what that feels like. I have empathy for that situation, so I gravitated towards him, and I remember I was trying to help him feel better. So we get to talking. He starts feeling better. We get to talking, and he said he shows me this book, and I'd never seen it before. And it's just so crazy because we didn't know each other before we were in jail together, but the page, the what he showed me in this book, it described my life. I was blown away. It was the page that talked about if you could be the actor and the director of the film of life, and if everybody just did what you told them, what you thought they needed to do, everybody would be happy, including yourself. And that's it. That's what my life felt like to me. I felt like it was always my responsibility. Everybody else's well-being was always my responsibility. If everybody would just do what they were supposed to do, everyone would be fine. But that's not the case. And when I read that, it made me think of my mom, because my mom spent some time in prison, and when she got out of prison, the judge ordered her, she had to move in with me. And, I was responsible for getting her to her drug screens. I was responsible for getting her to AA meetings, I think like 3 a week. And, she did that until, she successfully completed parole. That's just part of the reason why I felt like, that paragraph in the book described my life, because I was always taking care of everybody but myself. Was taking care of my brother, making sure he was getting to school the best I could. I was a kid raising a kid, and then I felt like I was a kid babysitting my mom. So it's just crazy that when I seen that, I was like, what? How would they know this about me, right? It was just a seed that was planted. I'm at the end of the day, it's somebody else's addiction is not your responsibility, and it's not up to you to cure it. You cannot choose recovery for somebody. It's a deeply personal thing. And it's usually a painful thing, most people do not go peacefully into recovery. I had to be taken to treatment in handcuffs, literally. But what changed my life was, running out of avenues and people to rescue me. I said this in my last episode. If I mess up, I can't go stay with my mom or my dad. I don't have nothing to fall back on. That's why I believe what I'm telling you guys. And just because this worked for me, it doesn't mean that I think it's going to work for everybody. Again, everybody has to come to this on their own terms. When any perceived safety net disappeared, that's where my recovery began. I was finally not only given an opportunity to look at myself, but I was forced to. One day you look in the mirror and you're almost 40 years old and you're like, how did I get here? And I know that a lot of people, if they're not forced to look at themselves and they manage to evade legal consequence like I did for a long time, it's damn near impossible to arrest a cycle of addiction on your own. If I believe that if you're able to do that, you're not really an alcoholic. A true addict and alcoholic, if they were able to just stop using with their own free will, we wouldn't be talking about it. I want to ask you something. Have you ever tried to save somebody that wasn't ready to be saved? Or were you ever the person that somebody was trying to save, but you weren't ready to be saved? Please tell me in the comments. Let me know that I'm not alone with this. Your answer not only would let me know that I'm not just talking to myself here, but it can help somebody else who's watching this know that they're not alone. And I think that is a huge part of recovery, is knowing that you do not have to do this alone. You do not have to do this alone. That was a huge, huge misconception that I had. Well, I got myself into this mess, now I better figure it out. No, there are people that want to help and they do not want anything from you. If you are in the middle of loving someone who is in addiction, you do not have to, you cannot carry all that weight silently. Something that really helps me is writing. Writing was a habit that I developed when I was in treatment, and it was a habit that I took with me outside of treatment. I remember when I got out of treatment, I went into sober living, and I went almost a full year without having a phone in my hand. So for the first 3 days I was in sober living, I scrolled on TikTok for 72 hours straight. And eventually I realized, man, it's been 3 days and I haven't done one thing to protect my sobriety. So I sat down and I thought, okay, what are some healthy habits that I developed in treatment, and how can I put some structure around my everyday life now that I'm out of treatment? And I know that writing had one of the biggest impacts on me, and so I kept doing it. And I also designed and created my own journal, and it's really cool, man. I'm really proud of this. It tells you in the beginning some benefits of journaling. It has a declaration of intent, and it's got a toolbox. These are just some tools that helped me, and it's got a place for you to create your own toolbox, which I think is really important. And this changes. This is going to always evolve. And it's also got some light prompts in it. So I thought, when I was in that vulnerable place, what are some things that really helped me? Really, when I was having terrible anxiety, what are some things that really... So I got a spot in here for affirmations, and the reason why I have this spot is because I was so full of shame and guilt when I went into treatment that I could not look at myself in the mirror and say one thing nice to myself about myself. And I started doing research about it, and we damage the neural pathways in our brain when we're in active addiction, but they can be repaired. And I found a way. So it takes 28 days to create a new habit. Every morning I would wake up, I would brush my teeth with my left hand because I'm right-handed, Then I would take 25 exaggerated breaths in through my nose and out through my mouth. And then I would look at myself in the mirror and I would say 10 nice things to myself. And for the first 2 weeks or so, I could not look at myself while I was saying these things because I did not believe it. But what it does is it goes past your conscious and it goes into your subconscious. And before I knew it, it got easier and easier. And by the time the month was over, I was able to look at myself when I was saying these things. So I think that it's really important what you say to yourself. It's more important what you say to yourself than what anybody could ever say to you. So I know that was a long explanation, but that's why I have the affirmations part in here. Then another thing that's really important when you're in sobriety is gratitude. And that's not just for people in sobriety, that's anybody. The reason why I believe that is because you're going to find what you're looking for no matter where you're at. You're going to find what you're looking for no matter where you're at. If you're looking for drugs, you're going to find them. If you're looking for sobriety, it doesn't matter where you're trying to get sober at, it's there. There's no shortage of things to be miserable about, but it's up to you. It's up to you whether you want to wake up and be miserable every day. Just as there's no shortage of things to be miserable about, there's also a plethora of things to be grateful for. It doesn't matter what your situation is. It doesn't matter how bad it is for you. It can always be worse. And right now, somebody has it worse. So I put a spot for you to make a gratitude list, a short one. Then another thing that was really important for me was goals. Writing your goals down is so important. Studies show that people who write their goals down are 42% more likely to achieve them. That's a huge number. The odds are already against us. I will take that number every day of the week. And then, I have a spot that where you can write down, right now I feel, because although our feelings are not facts, writing is a really good and safe place for us to organize our thoughts and our feelings on paper. And I believe it's really important to put a date on it because you can go back and you can reevaluate, hey, look, man, look how far I've come. And then I have a spot where you can put how could I have made today better? Because I think that's really important. I think it's important to be able to have some reflection on, if stuff went sideways for you, man, write it down. So that way you can see, okay, today, this is where stuff went sideways for me. Now you can formulate a plan moving forward. And then I have a spot where you can write, what did you learn about yourself today? And what brought me peace today? And then there's just a spot for just writing, free writing, just blank pages. I'm really proud of this. And if you want to support what I'm doing, here's one way to do it. If you don't like to write, I'm sure you have a loved one who does. If you have somebody who's in recovery, this could really help them. It really helps me. The link is in my bio, so if you're interested in supporting, feel free. And if you're having trouble figuring it out, please DM me or email me at thegandeeshow@gmail.com. I'll be more than happy to walk you through it. If this episode spoke to you, man, follow us. I think it's important that we have real conversations here. The kind of conversations that people need, but not everybody's willing to have. And if you know a person who's trying to save someone who isn't ready, send this to them. It might just give them permission to breathe today. I don't know. This episode, I was a little bit all over the place, but just know this, man. Everything I say it out of love. I try to share the things that help me and that are deeply personal to me because I just think it's really important to be vulnerable and transparent out there. If I can remind you of one thing before I leave, it is you are fearfully and wonderfully made. I love you. I'm out.